All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another discussion of Vagabond. In this case, we are discussing the 12th Visbig bindup, which includes volumes 34, 35, and 36. So we are really getting close to the end, aren't we, Merphy?
Yes, we are. And it feels like it. It feels like we're leading. Again, we've said this last time. It's incomplete, but it feels like we're leading up to the end anyway.
It does, yeah. I don't know how much more Inoue intended to write after he left off, but it does feel like he didn't stop too far away from the finish line in many respects. Speaking of which, probably we should announce, in case anyone missed it, our next video is going to be on Murphy's channel, and that is going to be covering the 37th volume, which is the last complete volume in the series. Plus, there are a few extra chapters after that. So we will be covering those extra chapters as well. And there is an ending that Inoue has given, and Murphy and I are going to read that ending. So the ending is beyond, like I guess he just said, in case I don't finish this series, here's an ending for you. So we are going to read that ending, but we will, on the video that will be on Murphy's channel next week, we will give a warning for anyone who has not read that ending so that you can bail at that moment when we start talking about Inoue's ending. So I personally don't mind the spoiler of having the ending. If Inoue ever does finish the series, then I will most certainly go back and read those chapters as well.
Yeah.
So
Right?
Murphy, this was very different, I felt, and I want to get your thoughts on this bind up as a whole first, perhaps,
Mhm.
and then we can talk about some specifics, because we did get the beginning of an actual arc here, the Farmland Arc. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Something like that. But we also had a little bit of Kojiro before that. But your thoughts overall on this bind up?
Yeah, I loved it. The pacing slowed way down, and yet still it read faster than I think any other bind up has for me. I read 34, and then I was reading 35, and I got to the end of 36. And I said, wait, where was that break? I missed the break
Yep.
because it just moved, and I didn't notice that I should have already read enough for two volumes. But a lot of visuals, a lot of trusting the reader not to need words to communicate emotions, a lot of introspection, a lot of the beginnings of healing, as well as the past not letting you go.
Yeah, beautifully said. I think you expressed that perfectly, and I experienced something very similar. It did go by fast, and this is the least action-oriented part
Mm.
of the entire series so
Yet
far,
somehow the most brutal.
and somehow also still brutal. You have starvation and you have suffering, most definitely, but not the blood and gore so much as we've seen earlier. And it's interesting because we did have a commenter remark on one of the reasons why I guess Inoue paused, and that's an indefinite pause, is that he was having a hard time dealing with the amount of trauma being portrayed in the series, the violence and everything. I feel like you can feel him struggling with the violence himself as
Mhm.
sort of a meta observation. But and I could be totally wrong, but I do feel like you can feel in a way struggling with the violence of his series in these later portions of the series. And maybe I'm just projecting or something there, but it feels like that's what, along with Musashi, he
Mhm.
is struggling to not just because there is a glorification in some ways of the way of the sword and all of that, and there's this
Sure.
spiritual side to it that's being portrayed, but I feel like he's also, especially here near to the end, expressing some doubts as to whether achieving the kind of state of transcendence that we've been talking about
Right.
is the way of the sword really a valid way to do that,
Mhm.
because of the violence that is haunting Musashi, and you can really see it here, and his wrestling with that ego beast, that cloud or whatever it is that keeps coming up. So I'm really interested to see where he goes in with the last portions.
Yeah, me too. He definitely does a lot of what is immortality really, and what's the worth of it really, and what does freedom look like to the water and to me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so a lot of that kind of just figuring out what does matter here and where can I actually find that satisfaction that I've been searching for, and is it if I, have I been going about it in the wrong direction?
Yep, exactly. I think we see him exploring that in his decision to stay with this rural community and try to help them. But before we do get to Musashi, there, as I said, there's a little bit of Kojiro, so perhaps we could talk about the little
Yeah, take it away
portions.
because
Yeah,
I wasn't completely sure what was going on in parts of that. So I would love to get your perspective first.
same here. Actually,
Really?
it was a little like, okay, what? There were moments I thought in this Kojiro section that were really cool, like
Mhm.
him with the horse and him calming the horse, and that being, I think, very much a reflection of Kojiro's being in that flow state, being connected to the world around him in a way that most people do not experience,
Yeah.
except in fleeting little glimpses. But Kojiro just seems to live in that flow. And that, I think, is why he's able to calm that horse, because he has a
Mhm.
sense of oneness with that horse. He understands that horse on a level that the other people trying to handle the horse don't get. So I
Mhm.
thought that was kind of cool what was going on there.
Yeah.
What was going on in the dojo, or and all of that, the introduction of this woman warrior character,
Yeah.
and
I don't know.
I, I was kind of like, where are we going
No.
with this?
No. And
Yeah,
his the fact that he went to her and then pulled her robe open and was
yeah,
fixated on the necklace, on the
right.
crucifix.
The crucifix. Yeah,
Yeah. Which I haven't seen any Catholicism or
yeah,
Christianity or anything introduced to the story. So why would he know? Why would he care? Why would that be
yeah.
something he would be drawn to?
Yeah, unless there's a message there about, and this is, so yeah, you're right. It's the first reference, and I don't know historically when Christian missionaries would have arrived in Japan. It
Mhm,
seems a little early, honestly, to me. This is
mhm,
around 1600 or so, I think, but I'm not very knowledgeable about Japanese
sure.
history. So it's perfectly possible that you would have had a few Japanese Christians. But anyway, uh,
Mm,
as a spiritual symbol,
mm,
I suppose we could conjecture that maybe that's what draws Kojiro there, because all religions, I think, my own personal view is that all religions access in different ways this sense of connection with the world. And so Kojiro would have maybe homed in on that.
yeah,
Uh,
that's possible. That's a good point because that connectivity, that kind of awareness of what's around you, like
yeah,
in the last bind up where the one old man died and then the other old man said, ah, you had to beat me to it, even though there's no reason he should have known.
yeah.
Yeah, that kind of just spiritual understanding of what's happening. So that's a really good point. It could just be that he felt something spiritual and needed to find it.
Yeah, that's the best I can do
Yeah.
with that. Although it must be said that the character herself is, I mean, she's struggling. Obviously, she's, when we first meet her, she's drunk, and
Mm,
she clearly has some problems that we're not, and maybe they are related to her place in that society. As
sure. I
you
don't think
know,
female warriors are probably
yeah.
something that's as highly respected or treated the same. I mean, everybody seemed pretty shocked to find out that she was a woman.
Yes, yes. There is that. And I think some of them were aware. And it was a matter of them tolerating her presence because she was probably one of the best warriors there, if not the
Mm,
best. But also, you can feel the resentment from the men,
mhm.
because, oh, how can a woman be better than I am at this? So so I don't know. Was he going to explore? Maybe we'll see a little bit more of that in this volume 37. I don't know, but was he going to explore some gender dynamics through this character. It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely written strong warrior women. I'm thinking of my chain and sickle guy and the girl who taught him.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
I don't
yeah.
remember their names now, but it's still my favorite volume. Is their volume, or their bind up.
Rindo. Her name was Rindo.
Nice. Hey,
Yeah.
good one. Rindo. Yeah. She was young and she was little, but she was the master and she was the one teaching. So I definitely don't think that it's out of the cards at all for him to continue to explore that kind of dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. And then of course Kojiro also is continues to have a certain way with on the romance front where we meet this one widow character. I mean, everywhere he goes, he seems to meet
Oh, he
gorgeous
finds someone.
widows, and come on, geez. So, but I also felt that there was in that moment a kind of a beauty and a certain release for her
Mm,
that was something maybe that she needed in her life. So meeting Kojiro and being able to embrace a moment of beauty was something
mm,
that was much needed for her. As this person who's obviously been in mourning, and and Kojiro seems to recognize that. He sees the sorrow, and I think part of his motivation in that particular instance was to comfort this person
mm.
in the way that he knows, and knows very well. So
Yes. When I was talking on my Discord, someone brought up that Kojiro, they've always interpreted it as that's just his way of communicating and connecting.
yeah. Yeah, I can buy that. Yeah, I personally do not feel like there is a separation between the spiritual and the physical, and I feel like these things are very much connected. That the beauty of this physical world is very much a manifestation of the spiritual energy that infuses it. But perhaps that's it's a nice way of looking at
Very
Kojiro's.
Buddhist perspective, Philip.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, probably meshes well with what Inoue is doing in here. But
Yeah. Which, by the way, we're on Philip's channel. I should have said this in my video. Maybe I'll bring it up again. But for those of you who don't know, who are here from my channel and not from Philip's, he published a book that is very similar philosophies to that of Vagabond. Very, very similar philosophies. So you should check it out. Wavy Dan.
thank you.
Philip Chan.
Yes, thank you, Murphy. Yeah, and it's really cool for me to be reading Vagabond and seeing the Buddhism in there, and it was an element that very much influenced I guess the philosophy behind the magic in the world that I've created. So yeah, so this has been fun
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. I never would have guessed too, whenever we agreed to do this, that it would be so in line with what you already meditate on regularly.
It's really weird how the world works sometimes.
Yeah.
You think there's something cosmic, going on, guiding
Well,
all
you know,
these
the
things.
spiritual and the physical, there's no separation. So,
Yeah, yeah. So, this is very cool. I think that's pretty much it for the Kojiro. It's a very brief,
very
few
brief.
chapters. So let's move on to it's all Musashi
So much to talk about
from
in
here.
regards to Musashi.
Yeah. So, what do you want to start with?
Yeah,
I'll let you
absolutely.
begin.
I love to see, first of all, there's a lot, and I won't go into spoilers because I don't know what our viewers have read, but if you've stuck with us through the Vinland Saga, so many
My
similarities.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not only
Yeah.
did they both go into a farmland arc, but it was at their lowest point. It was when they really were trying to find themselves and find their purpose in the world and reshape their world philosophies, and that kind of breaking down of becoming empty and from there finding your fulfillment,
Yeah.
from there starting to rebuild again. It's the working the earth and bringing forth new life physically while you're bringing forth new life spiritually, and it's the connection with other people. It's the suffering. For Thorfinn, it was suffering in the sense that, no spoilers, it was a different kind of thing, different kind of situation he was in.
Yeah.
For Musashi, it was the suffering, the physical suffering of we don't have enough. we are unable to feed ourselves, and the community coming together. I loved that man who had enough and who learned to work the land
Yeah.
and gave to others by his own detriment, or to his own detriment, gave to other people.
Shusaku, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, to that nursing mother, so that she could feed her baby. What a beautiful scene when she turned to him and
Yeah.
said, "I have milk. It's working now. Thank you." You know, Whew. And just watching them, and Musashi really early on said, "Okay, I gotta go," and I don't blame him. I mean, he's
Yeah.
a warrior. He can, even if he chooses not to continue in the cycle of death, he can go find a way for himself. But he chooses to stay, and he chooses to starve and hang his life on the line
Yeah.
next to these people. And we'll talk about this more, but the place that this bind up ended was a pretty incredible place. But Musashi really has found himself, and he's found community, and a lot, a lot. Go ahead, your turn. Your
Oh
turn.
my goodness. Yeah, no, this is perfect. To me, there are three relationships that need to be talked about. One is the one you already alluded to with Shusaku, and the relationship between him and Musashi is interesting as it evolves, because initially Shusaku is very dismissive. I mean, he's kind of a bitter guy in many ways. He's very isolated from the rest of the community and a bit arrogant toward other people and standoffish, even though he's kind of a Ebenezer Scrooge type. There's a good heart down in there somewhere, and he's just waiting to come out, and it indeed does, as you said. But I think it's kind of cool, his relationship with Musashi as it evolves, and a respect that grows between them as they become collaborators in saving this village. The other one that happens even earlier, of course, is with Musashi and Iori, the boy,
Mhm.
whom we have so much to say about this, I think, because of Musashi's background, and there's just so many reflections and parallels and interesting things to talk about in this relationship between. It's been interesting how there have been a lot of father figures in here in the
Mhm.
series as a whole.
Mhm.
And Musashi is somewhat reluctantly been a sort of father figure with Jotaro in the past, but I feel like he's embraced this particular role here a lot more than he has before, and that's part of what you said about him finding himself.
Yeah.
I'm just, it's so beautiful, even though this is the least action packed bind up so far, and it probably will remain so. I just can't describe how engaging it was and how invested I am in this character and his development at this point. And I love where Inoue is going here, and what he's doing. It's just fantastic. And the other third one of the relationship I think we can talk about is just the general relationship between Musashi and the rest of the village, where you have certain characters who have given up, but see Musashi going out there and like a warrior pounding the digging into the earth, and they're like, well, if this guy, this stranger, this samurai who doesn't know a thing about farming, is so determined to make this work, why aren't we investing in our own future here, right?
Yeah. He provided in them hope.
Yeah, ironically, a guy like him who has gone through his life taking away hope, taking away life, taking away and basically dealing out pain to a lot of people.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if redemption is the word for it here, but I feel like Musashi at this point feels compelled to explore a different path. And I don't know how you come back from a life of violence like that. Like, I think he's always going to be haunted by that. And you certainly see him still wrestling with that dark cloud that keeps coming back and keeps tugging at him, and him denying it, but ultimately staying in this village, which is,
There's even a point where he just kind of brushes it away, just doesn't even,
yeah.
yeah, you don't affect me anymore. I think there's a lot to be said about, I've already forgotten the name. Was it Itari?
Iori,
Iori.
little boy. Yeah.
Yeah, because Jotaro came to him as someone who didn't have anything, as someone who desperately needed to find himself and to find a place and to find a family. And Musashi just was not in a place that he could be be someone for someone. He
Yeah.
really just still had to figure out his own stuff. And the fact that we now have a very similar situation where he's lost his father, he's suffering, he's in a place where he will die, and begs Musashi to stay with him, just like Jotaro did.
Yeah.
But this time, Musashi chooses to stay. He chooses to counsel him when this boy attacks the other boys in the village, and he chooses to teach him and speak to him about what's right here. Is it right to attack someone without a weapon? But also
Yeah.
teaching him how to use the weapon more effectively. So he doesn't want, like with Kojiro, his father just removed the weapon from his hands. He doesn't want to do that. He
Right.
just wants him to use it responsibly. And a question that came up that still comes up a lot with Vinland Saga is, your new peaceful, pacifistic lifestyle.
Yeah.
What happens when you're challenged? What happens when you don't have a choice but to fight? What happens when you can't keep running? And with Musashi, he physically can't keep running. His leg will not let him.
Yeah.
And so he has to directly answer that question as well throughout the duration of this bind up. And we get an answer. It's answered a lot more quickly in this one. And it's essentially, he's still going to defend himself. He's still going to fight back, but he's never going to instigate. That's not going to be his choice.
Yeah.
Um, but then again, the fact that he chose to stay and suffer with them, and he chose to help them provide and seek out counsel from the one man who knew, and at the same time seeking out counsel from the water, the physical and the spiritual needs are kind of being met in tandem and through the same outlet, which I thought was really neat too.
Oh my goodness. What Inoue does with water
Yeah.
throughout this series is so incredible, from Kojiro's connection to the ocean and the waves and the river that we've gotten before and being in the flow, and now the river here. Interestingly, they have to figure out how to work with it, right? They have to figure, and it's like this, what's his name? Shusaku keeps saying, you need to be in tune with the land. You need to be in tune with the land. And this is something that you see Musashi struggling to do, and lying out on the ground and putting his ear to it and putting it in his mouth and trying to be one with the land. And I feel like this is a journey similar to the Way of the Sword or the wood carving that we got in the previous bind up, where you become one with the thing that you're trying to do. And so Musashi this is obviously a much more, not just peaceful, but life sustaining way of being in tune with the universe, growing food, and so this is I think a very appropriate place for Musashi to be taking stock of himself. And it's a direct comparison to the Way of the Sword versus, and there's a lot of comparing going on, and he's still got that pull where he's been asked to go be a teacher for this clan, which I think is going to happen. We'll talk about the ending. Almost like Musashi's found this better way of living, of being in touch with the life force, and going back to his youth when he was a kid and was in the mountains and all of that we get some of those memories mixing in too, just beautifully. But I think this Way of the Sword thing is, in a way, it might be a sacrifice on his part. I'm guessing what's going to happen is he's going to go to these people and say, okay, I agree to be an instructor at for your clan, but you need to help these villagers, and that's my condition. Something like that maybe is what's going to happen. But
yeah, or potentially the villagers have at this point, by the time he does leave, that the crops have become more plentiful and they've learned, and now they're in a position where if he leaves them, they won't die. They will continue to survive. I do wonder though, because in this volume, he finally made his decision. I want to be with Otsu. That's that's the life I want.
yeah.
So you've got Jotaro, who desperately wanted Musashi to be his father figure.
Yeah.
And Musashi rejected him. And so Jotaro is just kind of tagging along with Otsu.
Yeah.
And so eventually they're going to meet, and Otsu is going to have Jotaro as her accessory, and he's going to want Musashi, and he's going to see that Musashi already got a son. Like he's good. Not to say he can't counsel and love them both, but it is kind of funny that Musashi ended up doing that with another kid.
Yeah, yeah, he really did. He embraced it. I love the playfulness of it too. Like they
Mhm.
wrestle, and
Yeah.
there's a kind of you really see Musashi's playful side a lot in this arc, which is beautiful. There's a beauty to seeing this side of this man whose life has been ruled by violence so
Mhm.
much. It's just so gratifying to see him able to connect to a kid that way, and remember his own inner child at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's bringing out lots of beautiful aspects to his personality. Just a wonderfully realized character here. I also love what's going on internally. There are spiritual sides as he remembers his older mentors, but even inside his body, that's healing. How do you like what Inoue does when he portrays the healing process going on inside Musashi's leg with those little people that you see?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Right. That was super fun. Well, it's
yeah,
similar too to Musashi wanting to smile, and the old men are there pulling his little face
yeah.
muscles up, which is so cute. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and it's worth looking at the different faces that he has within Musashi's body as the healing process is going
Mhm.
on, and they rally at certain points, and you see, I think there was a point where the faces resembled Jotaro,
Mm.
and they sometimes resemble a more like defeated aspect, like, oh, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do this. And sometimes they rally and they're like, yeah, and you can see his leg is beginning to heal. It's really beginning to heal.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, he's not limping anymore. He's not 100%. And I think that's going to come into play too whenever he is pulled away from this place that okay, now I'm healed enough that I could start seeking this life again.
yeah,
Um, because Musashi previously just about was wishing to have something similar to my chain and sickle guy, in that like having the choice taken from him because he found so
yeah,
much freedom in having the choice taken from him. And
yeah,
Musashi is trying to escape this cycle but can't. And having the choice taken from him, he assumed would be freeing as well. But I don't think it's going to be taken from him. I mean, it has been for a period, but I think it'll come back and he truly is going to have that choice again. And
yeah,
he's going to have to make it. He's not going to
yeah,
have it chosen for him.
yeah. I agree. I agree. Yeah, and just to one more time go back to those little people inside him
Oh,
healing.
sorry.
Oh no, 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 I love what you said. But that I think there's a Buddhist element to that too.
Okay.
Again, where you have this idea of again, if you look at all of life as essentially one entity, and that we are all part of it, like we're
Mhm.
all like little, cells or atoms that are part of this vast life. You see that reflected on another level within Musashi, with all of these little lives within him, in these little cells, what have you, trying to regenerate and heal and rally. And so it's just another cool reflection, I think, of this idea of the oneness of everything. And
Yeah.
we're all here. Recognizing in you, myself, recognizing you, recognizing in me, yourself, that we
Mhm.
are all in fact, part of the same life.
Yeah. And
So
how
I
can
think,
you hate someone if that's how it is?
yeah, that's right. How can you hate someone when you are them and they are you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and their pain is your pain, and their joy is your joy. So there's something really very beautiful to me in that.
Yeah. I agree. And springboarding off of that and getting to the conclusion, I think that that's really what brought Musashi to the point where he could finally ask for help,
Yeah.
which is what we've been building up to, chain and sickle, seeing that he asked for help or that she asked for help for him.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And that reflection of how can you do that? How can you ask for help from someone who has cut you down? And would I ever find myself so desperate for someone else that I'd be willing to humble myself like that, to humiliate myself like that? And these villagers who are begging him for help,
Yes.
and again, he reflects, how could you do that? How could you put yourself in that kind of position? And then it all comes back around after his boy is getting to the point that his life is on the line. Then, and I really love because you and I speculated that it was going to be Otsu. And I love that it's not his one true love that
Uh-huh.
brings him to that moment.
Yeah.
It's the connection with a community and with people and the value of life that he's learned that gets him there. It's an internal thing, not an external thing.
That is so beautifully said. Yeah. It's just such a wonderful aspect of this arc is he goes from being an outsider, being someone different from them altogether, a samurai, right? A Ronin, like there's no relation here at all, to being part of this community, to
Mhm.
really embracing their struggles and suffering along with them. And some of them don't make it, and I think he really feels the tragedy of that within himself.
Yeah.
There are some who pass away, like the older fellow. There's also one who takes his own life in despair. And it's like everybody in the community feels that
Yeah.
despair as well. And so it's jarring. It's very frightening in a way, for all of them, including Musashi.
Yeah.
But I love how he has embraced his being part of these people. And
Yeah.
you said it so well. And this is where I feel like his real transcendence is occurring, right? And sometimes that's how it is in life, where your most important things you learn are going on and you don't even realize it while you're learning them, and until after the fact. I feel like he's really, in embracing this community, found his humanity.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't say that better. Absolutely. He's found his peace. He's found his immortality
Yeah.
because he's found freedom from that pursuit, and he's found that connection finally. I think he's been seeking that connectivity, that connection with the heavens and the earth, and it's in connecting with people that he's finally gotten to where he needed to be
Yeah.
to make that final step of progress.
And it's so appropriate that this is all about the earth, right? This is a farming community. This is about the soil and one's connection with it, and realizing that one comes from the earth. So that is really beautifully reflected in the character of Shusaku, who keeps talking about my family has been on this land for generations. I'm one with this land. I
Mhm.
understand. I hear it. I know when the soil is right for the rice, and you see him opening up too in such a beautiful way, and through not just the suffering in the village, but also this him seeing Musashi. Again, he was very dismissive of Musashi. And it's such a beautiful transformation. He's kind of like the Ebenezer Scrooge of, like I said, of Vagabond. Um, and it's fun. He's a quirky personality that it's fun to see his soft side open up
Yeah.
there as they
I
all suffer
wonder.
together.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if, I mean, obviously he had value for his crops and he had value for his soil and he had
Yeah,
value for the people, but he wanted to provide for them in secret. He didn't want the credit or any of that. And I wonder if the reason why he ended up trusting Musashi was because the village was just surviving. They didn't really have any hope for their future. They were just trying to make it day by day. And with Musashi, he saw an unquenchable tenacity
yes,
to more than just survive.
yeah,
And it was, I think, because with farming, and we saw this halfway through this bind up where he was working with them and they worked so hard in that soil only to flood it and it didn't work. And the amount of work that goes into it and the fact that it will not always work out, you will not always get your crops. You will not always have a plentiful season. I grew up in a farming town, and I know the farmers were hurt when they didn't have a good crop that year,
oh yeah,
and it's devastating. And I think he needed somebody who not only carried that hope and wouldn't let go of it, but could instill hope in the others before he was willing to put in the time and the effort to actually teach them. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think you also hit on Musashi's central quality here, which is not that he's a great swordsman. It's that he's tenacious. You said the word tenacity, and that's the perfect word. He is his determination.
Mm,
That's how he becomes so accomplished in the way of the sword. but I feel like he needed to be steered in a more positive direction, if you
Yeah.
will. And you see it happening in this arc where he's trying to, and he's terrible at it really at first. And he puts the field in the wrong place, and he's, he's not that good at it, right? But he's so determined. And that's a really wonderful thing. I mean, there's so much to be learned from determination. I feel like that is a quality that is more likely to get you somewhere in life than any other quality, is to just keep at something and keep at it. Yes, talent is important and all of that, but I think determination is way more important in the end. So that's his quality, and I feel like he's being steered more and more toward determining to find enlightenment, and not through the way of the sword, which is, in a way, to achieve enlightenment through the way of the sword, you have to leave behind the sword, right? This is what we've learned from those mentor figures like Seiki Shusai, right?
Yeah.
To achieve enlightenment through the way of the sword, you have to leave behind the sword.
Mm.
And so maybe he's getting ready in a way, although he's got to have that encounter with Kojiro, I guess.
He does. He has to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, which we kind of touched on this, but we didn't really. Another thing that Inoue is doing that's very similar to what was happening in Vinland Saga is, um, his name is not Thorfinn. His name is Musashi.
Yeah.
Is Musashi. His past is haunting him and following him both spiritually and physically. So you get that spiritual and physical same thing happening at the same time, where he realizes the value of the lives that he's taken and the impact of that.
Yeah.
And so they follow him. And there was one point where he laid down in the earth and he passed out because he was working so hard. He
Yeah.
passed out, and those lives came around him and they were watching him. And they said, will he fail? Will he succeed? It doesn't matter. We just want to know. We just want to see it.
Yeah.
And they're hovering there always around him. And then in the physical, you have people that are literally hunting him down, because of his name, because of the effects that he's had on their lives, because of what he's left behind. So he has this, I just want to move forward, but that's not really how it works. You can't just have a spiritual change, be a new person, and your past no longer can touch you. You still affected people, and that's going to affect you today.
Yeah.
And that really is tackled in both of these series as well.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about the word, I mentioned the word redemption, and
Yeah.
what you talk about is so true. You don't get to have a change of heart and then suddenly all the pain that you dealt out all those years goes away.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. And we saw it in Vinland Saga, where, without getting too spoilery, there is an element of having to confront the pain that you have delivered, even after you've become a better person, and accepting that that's part of what you are, that's part of what you did, and the legacy of that is going to be with you. That doesn't mean forgiveness is not possible. I don't know how that works in Musashi's case. I mean, he deprived a lot of people of loved ones, and that the weight of that is just beginning, I think, to register with him. So that's I mean, you could say he never murdered anyone. If you look at it, murder as, if you look at combat and in this society, there's a belief that fair combat is an honorable thing, right? So it's not like he's going around just murdering people. There's an element to this where it's sanctioned behavior according to the society. Nevertheless, I think it just haunts him, and it would naturally, right? I think so.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of that confronting of the value of a warrior is stronger than the value of a life. And he's realizing, no, actually, life is so valuable, and it doesn't matter if I had an honorable fight and we both agreed to it. I didn't sneak up on them from behind. This was something that we all chose.
Right.
It doesn't matter. I still took a life, and I still affected a family.
Yep.
And that's kind of what he's been processing and realizing. And I think that that's a big piece of what made him value the lives of these individuals that were suffering that he came across.
His found family. Yeah.
Yeah. And even with the young boy,
Iori.
Iori, even with Iori, he's just lost his father.
Yeah.
And, we had that scene where he was at the tree weeping and missing him. And Musashi, he understood that pain and he was able to relate to him and say, the dead don't come back. That's something I'm all too aware of. And it's a different kind of grief that they're experiencing, but it was something that they could bond over, just the reality that death truly is final and there's no taking that back.
Yep. Yep. That is for sure. Yeah. I really see anyway wrestling with what a society says is okay or good even versus, I guess, is there a universal conscience? I mean, we all have slightly different understandings of morality based on our backgrounds and our religions and, any number of factors. So I like how he is exploring, here's what society says is honorable and good. And I see some, possible, what are the repercussions of this heroic ideal of the way of the sword? And what's the trauma that results from following this way in a way that, according to the perception of that society is perfectly honorable.
Yeah.
But, you could see it from outside of that society as, oh, this is very destructive. From our time and place, we see it as a very destructive ideal to be following. So
yeah, and I think that's something that's relatable today as well. I mean, in all times in history, including today, in all cultures, including our own, things that society deems acceptable, because that's just the way of things, the individual may say, but is that the way though? Is that the way? And kind of wrestling with that and figuring out how to enact that in their own lives and what that means for them. And like, this is a very relatable kind of struggle, even if it's done in a completely different setting and timeline.
It's very relevant to our lives, and that's one of the things that makes this a classic, I think, is how we're reading a story about a fictional, very fictionalized version of early 17th century Japan, and somehow it just speaks to us too so much. That's just amazing what Inoue has achieved here. Well, how about go ahead, you had a thought.
Well, just off camera, you and I were talking about how a lot of readers will engage with a story by saying, did I enjoy it? Did I not enjoy it? This is escapism. This is my enjoyment, that. And it's just very...
Which is fine,
Yeah. Very like enjoyment. Was I entertained? And then there's other readers that really try to engage and try to pull the themes and pull what the author was trying to say. Both forms of reading are great. But this is one of those stories where no matter what kind of reader you are, it's there.
It's there for you if you're willing to engage with it that way. There's just, Inoue has really woven a lot into this, and a lot of it probably intentionally, a lot of it just coming from his psyche, and that's really cool. That is really cool, and he achieves so much in the storytelling. But I am curious about your thoughts on the ending. I said what I think is going to happen, possibly with Musashi going to make a deal. I don't know if that's the way it's going to happen or not. I haven't read volume 37 yet. But what are your feelings about, now that we're close to the end? What do you think is going to happen next, or what are your thoughts on the ending as we have it at the end of 36 at least?
Yeah, it's difficult to say because the series didn't end in the traditional manner. I definitely think that Otsu is going to have to come back into the picture for Musashi. Musashi and Kojiro, and I think Masahachi as well, all really need to come back into the picture and have somewhat of a... I mean, if Inoue knew, I'm not going to see this out, but I have some chapters left in me, then he had to bring them all together, or at the very least, give them some sort of satisfying place to pause. So I think we're going to see something from each of them in that regard. As far as what we've been looking for from Otsu, I'm not sure we'll get it. I think we're running out of pages.
So, yeah. Yeah.
But as I said, I think that Musashi is going to have that offered to him and realize, my leg is well enough that I can, and make that choice and
Yes.
not have that choice taken from him.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be his choice. As far as Matahachi is concerned, I feel like we did get our satisfying
With
conclusion
the
in a
meta
way.
stuff.
Yeah, we got a brief glimpse of him, I think, as older storytelling
Yep.
Matahachi in this arc. So he's still doing his thing.
Mhm.
He definitely has taken a back seat, though.
Still
In
has
this,
the certificate, though. I feel like he has to surrender that
he needs to
certificate.
deliver that certificate.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I've seen some of the art that was included in this arc that makes me think he's, because early in this arc there were those beautiful color illustrations,
Yeah.
and one of them included and some, no, sorry, they weren't all color, they were just ink. There's some that were color and some that were just ink, and it was really cool because I felt like here's Inoue giving us a review of the entire series. You remember those early panels
Right.
where we saw all this art, and it was very I don't know how to describe this. I'm not a professional artist, but it was using black ink and in a very more, I guess, sort of like rough or
Yeah. It was
crude
very
way.
heavy ink.
Yeah, so I thought it was really cool because you could see I was almost like, here I am revisiting the series. And I felt like, okay, in a way, you're saying goodbye here, aren't you? You're reviewing all of this. You're getting ready for something here.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw a lot of those journeys put together in one place, and all these themes, conjuring all these themes that we've been talking about just in that series of full page panels.
Yeah.
That was really interesting, and there wasn't a word in there. It was
Mm-hmm.
just presenting, here's this journey that's happened, here's this, and seeing how they're all connected.
Yeah.
That was cool, wasn't it?
That was very cool. That was very cool. I
Yeah.
love the way you described that too.
Huh. Huh. Yeah, I feel
But
like,
you didn't. Where do you think it's going to go?
well, I mean, I keep saying we're gonna have the big confrontation between Kojiro and Musashi. What I don't know is the nature of that confrontation. These two love each other. They've connected. They're friends. My still favorite scene is the snowman scene of the entire series. So I can't help but think that it's going to be a more spiritual encounter than violent, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it will have a physical manifestation, and
Mhm.
someone watching from the outside might think, oh, these two are fighting. But
Yeah.
what's happening inwardly for the two of them, I think, is going to be much more spiritual.
Ooh, okay. I like that because in the snowman scene and scenes around it, they were playing with sticks. And
Yeah.
in their mind, you could kind of see, if we had swords, what would this look like? So
Yeah.
I kind of love that idea of now they have swords and they're playing. And maybe on the outside, it looks like they're fighting, but internally, they have sticks. Ooh,
Yeah.
oh, Philip, that's a
Yeah.
good one.
Well, I think you just added to it there beautifully. Yeah. So there was a good team effort there, I think. Yeah. I love it. So that I think is where we're ultimately heading. Like you, I we'll see with Otsu. I think there could have been more of Otsu, but no story is going to be absolutely perfect what I want it to be.
Sure.
So, I want to see what Inoue presents, and it's possible that if he had done more of the final chapters in the series, he might have done more Otsu. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
But we shall see. And I'll be interested to see how, I think he is going to leave behind this community that he's become part of, this rural community that he has helped to save. And I don't know what form that takes with Iori. Is Iori going to come with him? Is someone like Shusaku going to adopt Iori?
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know.
I feel like Musashi's already adopted him.
Kind of has. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's true.
I see him going along. Maybe he and Jotaro will be brothers.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Another found family there, which is
Mhm.
in many ways the most beautiful kind of family, because you when you choose these people, there's something beautiful in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, any other thoughts on this arc? Well, thank you, Merphy. This has been So much fun. All the
Yeah,
ideas popping in here from
there's
viewers.
just so much to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, but it's such a joy to have a story that you really enjoy and then come to talk with someone like you who has all these wonderful ideas, and then all these other ideas are popping around in my head, and just such a wonderful process. I enjoy it so much. So I thank you.
Yep, likewise.
And thank you all of you viewers who've been following along with us. Check out our last discussion of the series together on next week on Merphy's channel, which will include, as I said, the 37th volume, the little chapters that he finished, plus the ending that Inoue wrote. And then a little bit later in early June, Merphy and I are going to talk with Patrick Leo about the entire series. So look out for that as well. All right, everybody. Till next time.